Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. We just watched some home movies, including a stunning Christmas footage with some straight-up great toys, exceedingly well lit, probably floodlights, blinding floodlights. But Dad, that was really beautiful. I mean, that's the level that home movies can be, and I'm wondering if that person who shot that was a professional photographer, because there was very deliberate, shots. It wasn't, maybe even with a tripod. But yeah, that was really great. So we watch old 16mm films, and that was from a collection from someone that I've been digitizing stuff for, the Oregon Archive, which has some home movies in it. And what's interesting is almost all the collections that I've been scanning for the collectors or filmmakers all have home movie footage in them, and not home movie footage of the people who own the collection. It's things that they've acquired, or things that have shown up at estate sales, or and it's the same with AV Geeks. We have a collection of home movies that are not me or my family, and they show up. And every year I do something called Home Movie Day, and we try to talk to families about the importance of their home movies, and that they hold on to them, even if they don't have the means to watch them, or even if they've transferred them to some sort of format that they can watch them, some sort of digital format. Hold on to them, because once they get separated from the family, then you lose context of who these people are, where were they located, what year was it, all that stuff. So anyways, so that was that. So behind me, I have the telecine hooked up, and we're going to watch a film, which I don't think we've watched before, called Commercial Photographer. So, enjoy.
How are you, Dwayne? What's a good word?
Oh, nothing much.
How's everything?
Okay, I'm looking for a new lens today.
What type?
28. I think that's wide enough, a 28 auto Nikon.
Gee, I got that lens in stock.
I'll try it on my camera, okay?
Sure, go right ahead. Beautiful lens.
How do you like it?
Ah, it's a beauty.
I like it.
Good.
How much?
126.
Hiya, Dwayne.
Hi, how you doing?
How are you? Busy?
Oh, yeah, keeping busy. My
Very
contact-
good.
Contacts ready?
Mm-hmm. Celeste, Dwayne's contacts?
And I have some that I told you I didn't need till next week, but if they're ready, I'll pick them up.
Well, I'm sure they'll be ready maybe a little later.
Well, I'll order from these then.
Okay.
Let me see. Frame number 7,
Number 7.
8 by 10 double weight glossy.
Right.
Full frame, no cropping.
Full frame.
Frame number 4.
Right.
I want this cropped a little bit.
Dwayne, you got a good start here. How much farther are you going to go?
Well, I think my idea is to try to show some of the grace of karate, like everyone shows the brute strength breaking boards, and so I've got a lot of flying stuff here.
Well, this kind of karate isn't the breaking boards kind, is it?
You notice there's not a fist in the whole thing.
No,
You don't
no.
see one fist. It's very, very graceful.
One other thing that you haven't done that I'd like you to see, and this, it's just a chance thing. It may work out, it may not, is to go in with a very ultra-wide-angle lens and get in on the floor, right underneath them, and let them fly around you. The best stuff here is when you get real close to this, when you get inside the action. And these things I'm marking now are the ones I want for the initial selection. Everything goes up. It just says what you're doing. It says karate. Now, how long do you think it would take to fill in these blanks?
Well, how's 2 weeks? I feel that I can get it, fill in all the gaps for you in that length of time.
I need it in a week. We got a problem.
Make it a week and a half.
Yes, Mr. Ribbit. I'll send him right in. We'll see you now.
May I leave my camera back here?
Yes, surely.
Thank you.
How are you, Mr. Bay?
Fine. How are you, Mr. Rivet?
Good. Can you explain what all this is about? As you know, we're an accounting firm, and one of our clients is doing an annual report. We thought it might be a very good idea to put some pictures, close-ups, right into that report. And I understand you have some very interesting shots.
What are you more interested in, candids or posed?
Candid and pose, possibly, but
I have some of both, so I'll show you. Now, these aren't the annual report type pictures, but you can get an idea of the kind of work from these.
This looks very interesting. Might do very well. How'd you take this shot?
I happened to be walking by with a telephoto lens, snapped it and by it.
This looks like another very good shot. This we couldn't use. I'll tell you what, I want to show these to my partner and get his opinion. You think you could leave the portfolio here a few days?
I'd be glad to.
Very good. I'll get in touch with you in a few days then.
Right.
Right.
Dwayne Bay bought his first camera when he was 12 years old. He never dreamed then that he would become a commercial photographer. By the time Dwayne was graduated from high school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, photography had become the most important thing in his life. He found a job as a teletype operator, but he spent all of his free time learning about photography. Finally, one of his photographs won a national award. Shortly after, he went into business as a commercial photographer. Since then, his work has appeared in magazines and newspapers throughout the country. He's come a long way since his first baby brownie.
That was great. So that's part of that series that we're basically showing black young people different career choices. I think we've seen one for the stewardess, I think for the air traffic controller. I have one for a machinist, and then I have one for operating a franchise. So we'll be busting out some more of those as we move along. So this next film is a newsreel purportedly shot by and narrated by kids. It's called Kitty Camera. And I've shown, I think, 2 others of these. I don't think I've shown this one yet. It's only 3 minutes, so if I have duplicated it, then oops. But here's Kitty Camera. Enjoy.
And speaking of action, it's junior rodeo time again in Texas. The Indian dance is interesting. No rodeo is ever without one. Now for one of the main events, riding wild steers. Possibly the most dangerous sport in the rodeo. Here's a young fellow on a real bucking bronc. And another trying to get along on a doggy. Rodeos are always thrilling. I bet this is one winter sport that you've never seen before. And Kitty Camera brings you another first. Glide shoe. A sort of miniature ski which straps on to your own shoes. For the children who live in the Alps regions or other ski centers all over the world, the glide shoe could mean many thrilling hours of fun in the snow and ice. And how about this for a fast, thrilling race? Boy, look at them go! And number 728 comes out, a smiling winner. Kitty Camera goes golfing, and this time to the Australian National Golf Tournament for schoolboys. And what makes it even more exciting is that the players' dads are the caddies. These boys probably learned to play golf while they were out on the links caddying for their dads. But today, the tables are turned. The sidelines have sisters, moms, and friends for rooters. And the winner! Little Johnny is lifted to the shoulders of cheering pals and carried off to the clubhouse.
There you go. Some more Kitty Camera. And he said bucking. I also was like, what? All right, so we got another film on the telecine here. I need to change the title. And I'm actually kind of interested. I haven't seen this. So this is called Cities of the Web. So I don't know if this is about geography. Is it about spiders? It's certainly not about the internet. This film is old enough that it's not the internet. So I'm just kind of interested to know, what do you guys think it is? Write it in the comments. I'm interested. Anyways, here's Cities of the Web. Enjoy.
40 bit and a half. 68. 40 more. 40 and a half. 40 more. 40 bit more. 40 and a half. 40 bit and a half. Go to 1 July. Yes, sir.
That was awesome. Wow. Manny Album. Somebody should look that name up and see if he's got some other jazz credits to his name. That was really... Love stuff like that. Absolutely love stuff like that. This next film is a British film, but I think it was made for American publisher. I'm not 100% sure. I'm trying to do a little bit of research on this, but this is when you have a British narrator, everything just tends to sound more distinguished. But this is about the discovery of radioactivity. Enjoy. Oh, and I should say thank you, Rick K, for the coffee. That's one way you can support AV Geeks, is by going to ko-fi.com/avgeeks. That coffee will help me with my respiratory system. The caffeine is good for me, the hot steam. And also, it's now pollen season here in Raleigh, so I'm dealing with that too. Good times. All right, anyways, thanks again, Rick K, and everybody for your support. But here's Discovery of Radioactivity. Enjoy.
In 1895, at Würzburg, Wilhelm Röntgen conducted a series of experiments on the effect of cathode rays on certain crystals. He discovered that some crystals became fluorescent as soon as they were subjected to the rays of a cathode tube. To establish a definite connection between the cathode rays and the fluorescence of the crystals, Röntgen decided to see what would happen when the light from the tube was screened off. He covered the tube with black paper and switched on. The crystals immediately became fluorescent again. It was now clear that he was dealing with invisible rays capable of causing fluorescence in crystals and also of penetrating light-proof paper. Röntgen realized he was dealing with a new phenomenon. He called these mysterious rays X-rays. Soon he discovered these rays had wholly unexpected characteristics. In one experiment, he wrapped a photographic plate in black paper. He removed the red filter from the light. Then he placed his hand on this plate and exposed it to the rays. The plate was developed. The negative showed not just the outline of his hand, but also the outline of its bone structure. A metal ring on one of the fingers appeared as a bright glare. Röntgen had taken the first X-ray. Since the bones were much better defined on the negative than was the tissue, the rays apparently found it easier to penetrate tissue than bone. The metal had resisted the rays. In Paris, Henri Becquerel, working along the same lines as Röntgen, started with the known phenomenon that certain chemical substances became fluorescent after being exposed to sunlight. Röntgen had shown that exposure to X-rays caused a similar fluorescence. Was there, Becquerel asked, some connection? Like Röntgen, he used a photographic plate wrapped in light-proof paper for his experiment. On this plate, he placed fluorescent uranium salts, which had been exposed to sunlight. When developed, the negative from this plate showed dark spots where the salts had been. Again, it was clear that the paper around the plate had been penetrated by rays. But other samples which had not been exposed to the sun, and were not therefore fluorescent, were equally effective in blackening photographic plates. The rays could not be due to fluorescence. The only explanation was that the uranium salts themselves must be throwing off invisible and hitherto unexplored rays. Another important step forward had been taken. Becquerel now turned his attention to uranium salts. He placed some salts between two charged condenser plates. The indicator of the electroscope went back. It had been discharged. The charge had leaked away. The rays from the uranium must have caused the air in the condenser to conduct electricity. The air had become ionized. Becquerel had made a completely new discovery, that minerals exist which give off invisible rays capable of discharging a condenser and blackening photographic plates. Marie Curie, a young Polish chemist, decided to investigate the phenomenon further and began a systematic search for other minerals which would give off these rays. She was in fact looking for what we now know as radioactive elements. She discovered that the uranium ore pitchblende discharged a condenser considerably faster than other minerals did. Clearly, pitchblende must contain a radioactive element much more powerful than those found in the other substances. But pitchblende consists of many compounds and contains many other substances beside uranium. So Marie Curie and her husband Pierre set out to isolate the substance in pitchblende which was causing the radiation. This meant processing large quantities of the mineral, and to do this, the Curies set up their laboratory in an old shed. Here they began the long job of dividing pitchblende into its components and analyzing them. First, it had to be pounded into a more convenient powdered form, which was dissolved in acid. and various techniques were used to isolate the radioactive elements contained in the original pitchblende. The final solution was allowed to crystallize, and eventually two powerful radiating substances were found. One the Curies called polonium, after Marie Curie's native country, Poland, and the other, radium. Only a minute quantity of radium could be obtained from 1 ton of pitchblende, but the rays from radium proved to be millions of times more powerful than those from uranium. These they called radioactive rays. Julius Elster and Hans Geitel, two German scientists, measured these rays on an electroscope similar to this one. A positively charged rod is brought up to the cap of the electroscope where a positive charge is induced in the cap. This flows down to the fixed electrode and to an attached but movable gold leaf. The leaf is repelled but is discharged on contacting the negative electrode on the left. In their experiment, instead of the charged rod, they connected an ionization chamber to the electroscope. The current was switched on. Radioactive gas, formed from the element thorium, was pumped into the chamber, causing the electroscope to react as it did to the charged rod. The leaf is again repelled, discharging itself when it contacts the negative electrode. The charge is measured at regular intervals. These units of measurement can be joined to form a graph. It showed that the radioactivity of a substance gradually diminishes, and that radioactive atoms, while giving off energy in this way, gradually cease to be radioactive. Now that the existence of these rays had been discovered and ways of measuring them had been found, Ernest Rutherford began to analyze the whole phenomena in more detail. He enclosed a radioactive substance in a lead case. Since radioactive rays are absorbed by lead, the rays could only escape through a hole in the lid. The emerging rays could be detected by a fluorescent screen. Rutherford now discovered that in the presence of a powerful magnet, the screen was illuminated at 3 separate points, suggesting that there were 3 kinds of ray, each responding differently to the magnetic field. He called the rays alpha, beta, and gamma. From the ways in which the rays had been deflected, Rutherford concluded that alpha rays were positively charged and beta rays negatively charged. The gamma rays were not deflected, so he decided that these were not charged particles, but electromagnetic radiation. At this time, the atoms of radioactive material were thought to look like this. Here, the uranium is casting off alpha rays, the moving red particles. It was discovered that the radioactivity of a substance diminished in an unusual way. For example, the radioactive atoms of a gram of thorium decay by half in 10 seconds. After a further 10 seconds, half of the remaining radioactive atoms decay. This time period, in the case of thorium, 10 seconds, is called the half-life. The half-life is the length of time taken for a given amount of substance to lose half its radioactivity. The graph of Elster and Geitel had earlier illustrated the same theory. On this graph, we consider an arbitrary mass NO of a substance. From the graph, we can find the value of NO over 2, and on the time axis, the corresponding time taken to reach this point of decay. The process can be repeated to find the time to decay from NO over 2 to NO over 4. We can clearly see that the decay period is the same in each case. Each substance has its own particular rate of decline, and from these 4 examples, it can be seen that, as we have already stated, the half-life is the length of time taken for a given amount of substance to lose half its radioactivity. When a radioactive atom casts out a ray, the atom is changed to one of another element. The new element will then cast out another ray and be changed to yet another element. So a definite decay series may be obtained for the radioactive elements. The uranium-radium series, the actinium series, and the thorium series. These figures give the atomic weights and positions in a periodic table of elements of a thorium atom. The atom gives off a positive alpha particle. The thorium is changed to the new element mesothorium-1. When mesothorium-1 gives off a negative beta particle, it becomes mesothorium-2. It was discovered that the new materials were formed in a definite series. Radiothorium, thorium-X, thoron, thorium-A, thorium-B, thorium-C, thorium-C2, and finally thorium-D, a type of lead which could not be transformed further. These intermediate materials were not new elements, but isotopes of known substances. The continuous decay of radioactive elements means that every naturally radioactive substance contains a mixture of the different elements of the decay series. Also, the various types of ray can appear simultaneously. These 2 facts meant that the atom could no longer be regarded as stable and indivisible. The atom can decay, and in releasing energy gives off alpha, beta, and gamma rays. The discovery of radioactivity led to a new conception of the structure of the atom and of matter.
National Council of Educational Films. Wow. Somewhere there's a bunch of boxes filled with the paperwork for the International Council of Educational Films. I'm not familiar with them, but it's pretty exciting. All right, I got one last film for you today, and this is the part of the Retrospect series. The Office of Civil Defense, United States, created this TV series that TV stations could show where they were trying to sneak in important information about civil defense. But they also knew that there was this kind of hunger for free content by these local TV affiliates. So the Civil Defense Department said, hey, why don't we create this show that has content that's free, but then also we have in the middle, we have an ad for civil defense, specifically fallout shelter, living in a fallout shelter. So this is kind of tangentially related to the discovery of radioactivity film that we just saw. So this is called Retrospect, and this is the family interview. So there's a bunch of like archival footage before the public service announcement about living in a fallout shelter, and then after. Enjoy.
This is Douglas Edwards, bringing you Retrospect, a film excursion into today.
Retrospect is brought to you by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization in cooperation with your local Civil Defense Office and your local station. And now here's your host, Douglas Edwards.
Historic events usually go unrecognized as such until after the fact. But on June 18th, 1940, almost everyone sensed that the fate of democracy hung in the balance as Winston Churchill, speaking before an assembled parliament, described the fall of France and outlined the cruel ordeal that lay ahead for the British people. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty, he said, and so bear ourselves that if the British Commonwealth and Empire last for 1,000 years, men will say this was their finest hour. Europe had fallen under the swastika. America had not yet entered the war. England and her people stood alone, expecting invasion. In August, Hitler launched an all-out aerial attack. The Luftwaffe, said Hermann Goering, would bring England to her knees. But England also had an air force, and in the first 10 days of the attack, the RAF shot down 700 German planes. Near the end of August, a Nazi pilot wrote, "I'm quite sure I'm one of the last men to have seen London. It will stand for but a few days more." Facing the gravest crisis in the nation's history, the English people, indomitable, valiant, enterprising, unrelenting, kept London standing. Goering's blitzkrieg had failed, but the nightmare was far from over. Londoners jammed into underground shelters. Thousands would find themselves homeless when next they saw the light of day. The Luftwaffe had begun a series of saturation bombings at night. For 57 consecutive nights, they pounded the British capital with high explosives and incendiaries. By year's end, 23,000 Britons had lost their lives, 32,000 had been wounded, and the number left homeless went uncounted. During the most devastating raid of the war, the city was bombed by 300 German planes. The House of Commons was hit, the House of Lords set on fire, and Westminster Abbey, Big Ben, and the British Museum were severely damaged. Still, the British refused to crumble. The yearning to remain free was alive and contagious throughout the land. Disraeli once referred to England as a nation of shopkeepers, never so great as in adversity. And though Hitler made a shambles of London, this nation of shopkeepers would destroy Hitler's dream of conquest. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth were frequent visitors to disaster areas. Throughout the long ordeal, the royal pair contributed greatly to the morale of their subjects. As the war entered its 4th year, the government was forced to evacuate women and children from the capital. London was then subjected to one of the most vicious attacks in military history. The Germans had begun to bombard the island with their new secret weapon. And that secret weapon, the flying buzz bomb. This latest of Hitler's monstrosities weighed 12 tons and carried a 1-ton warhead. It was capable of leveling an entire city block. The British only dug in deeper and continued bravely to carry on the struggle. Through it all, they had the inspired leadership of Winston Churchill. Victory at all costs, he told them. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be, for without victory there is no survival. In the final analysis, they knew they could settle for nothing less. In retrospect, we know the Battle of Britain was the turning point of World War II, a turning point made possible by what Shakespeare called this happy breed of men, this little world, this precious stone set in the silver sea. Just as survival was the keynote for them, so it is the keynote for us today. On August 28, 1960, a Topeka, Kansas family, Mr. and Mrs. Douglas Brown, and their 8 children emerged from their fallout shelter after spending 7 days in complete isolation from the outside world. They lived, this family, in the 88-square-foot shelter in a personal survival test. Now, what happens to people when they're cut off from all outside contact for 7 days? What kind of problems do they face? What could you expect if you had to live in a shelter for a week? To answer these questions, we've asked Mr. and Mrs. Brown to be our guests on today's program. Well, greetings, lady and gentlemen. Is he still awake? Mr. Brown, first of all, what inspired you to spend a week in a fallout shelter?
Well, we are in the business of building fallout shelters, and we wanted to find out exactly what problems would arise. And also, we wanted to find out what would be necessary for our family to spend a week in a shelter.
Mrs. Brown, I rather imagine you had quite a few problems. What was the biggest one?
I think our biggest problem was keeping the children occupied and keeping them from fighting and arguing with each other.
Well, wasn't there a space problem there, too?
Yes, we had bedrolls on the floor and bunks that we slept in, and we rotated each night so that no one had to sleep in the same place twice.
How did his name is Russ, isn't it?
Yes.
How did he make out during the 7 days?
I think he really did better than anyone else. He was quite content.
He seems quite content now, as a matter of fact. Who was the captain of the children's portion of the team, by the way? First of all, tell us, he's, 7 months old?
7 months.
And your oldest is?
She's 11 years.
And
I think she was pretty much the captain. She helped control them, helped play with them. She organized games and read to them quite a bit.
Did she get any aiding and abetting from you in this situation?
A great deal. Yes, we had to exercise complete control almost all the time on the children in order to keep things from getting out of hand.
You think generally they reacted rather nicely?
Quite nicely, yes.
Did you keep any record day by day as you went along?
Yes, we kept a daily diary.
What about, did you make any recordings or anything like
yes.
that?
Oh, we made tape recordings, too, that were very interesting. They were just spasmodic recordings that we would take every so often.
Well, tell me, what did you do for exercise, Mr. Brown?
Well, for exercise, we had the hand blower that we had to turn, and we found that the children actually delighted in turning the blower themselves. We never at one time had to resort to turning the blower from necessity.
Did you have to keep the blower going the whole time, or how long off and how long on is what I'm trying to say?
Well, approximately 20 minutes out of an hour.
I imagine a thing like that can be fun for kids at first. Did the fun continue over the full 7 days?
Yes, it did. They really liked it.
You had a little vying for position at the crank, I suppose. Huh?
Definitely. It was run at least half the time, I think.
Mrs. Brown, were there any psychological problems among the whole family, including the two of you? How did you get along, by the way?
We got along pretty well, better than we expected, really. The biggest psychological problem, I believe, was the fact that it was not very homey. We did everything we could to make it seem more as a home than as a shelter. We put pictures out of the children's color books. We put them on the wall, and we put a cloth on the table, and tried to dress the room up so that it was more like a place that we were living in rather than just existing.
Well, now, both of you, what did you learn from your experience?
Well, mainly that it is possible for a family like ours or other families to live in a shelter.
I take it you're glad you have it. You probably plan on building one just a little larger, maybe.
Yes, we do.
Well, thank you very much. Good luck to you. Nice having you with us today. Thanks a lot, Mr. and Mrs. Brown of Topeka, for appearing on today's program and sharing your shelter experiences with us. Building a shelter, stocking it with the necessary survival items, learning the facts about radioactive fallout are simple steps each of us can take to help us survive and our country recover from a possible nuclear attack. Regardless of what the Russian may claim, the game of baseball is indigenous to America. Long before most of us were born, it had established itself as the national pastime. But near the close of the 1920 season, baseball suffered its gravest crisis. The nation's headlines screamed of an underworld fix during the 1919 World Series. The infamous Black Sox scandal threatened to undermine public faith in the integrity of the game. The Major League club owners, justifiably alarmed, created the office of High Commissioner of Baseball, and the commissioner's function would be to restore the game's integrity in the minds and hearts of its fans. The man they elected was a strong-minded, uncompromising federal judge. His name was Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and in his first official act, he banished from the game all those involved in the Black Sox scandal. Under Judge Landis's leadership, baseball entered a new golden era, the era of the home run king. The 1927 New York Yankees, known as Murderers Row and the greatest home run hitter of all time within its ranks. The immortal Babe Ruth, the gentle, fun-loving slugger who broke a few training rules and never watched his weight, but hit a record 60 home runs that year and 714 during his lifetime. In the 1934 All-Star Game, Ruth and other great sluggers, among them Jimmy Fox and Lou Gehrig, had a shock awaiting them. Carl Hubble, the stylish left-hander of the New York Giants, would outshine all of them. Called the meal ticket by his teammates, Hubble stopped the sluggers cold that day in one of the most amazing pitches. 5 years later, the Iron Man of the Yankees, Lou Gehrig, after playing first base in 2,130 consecutive games, hung up his spikes. His farewell at Yankee Stadium was one of the saddest days in the game's history. The Babe, his old teammate and friend, could not hold back the tears. A year later, Lou Gehrig died of a rare paralysis. At Briggs Stadium in Detroit, 1940, Ted Williams, with his team losing in the ninth inning of the All-Star Game, blasted a home run into the seats to win the game. The Age of the Slugger featured the incomparable Yankee Clipper Joe DiMaggio. In the tradition of past Yankee greats, DiMaggio clouded 361 homers during his Yankee career. But probably the most famous home run of all time was hit in 1951 when Bobby Thompson of the Giants stepped to the plate in the ninth inning and put one into the left center field bleachers. The home run heard round the world brought his team from behind and made them National League champions. Both the fame of these men and the thrill of the game made baseball one of America's most valuable exports. In fact, at this very moment, behind the secret walls of the Kremlin, they may be choosing up sides for a fast 9 innings. Today, you've seen a view of yesterday, and you've met a family who've obviously given some thought to the future. The Browns are helping to assure survival in this nuclear age. What about you? Take the first step today. Look around your home. Decide on the safest area for your shelter. And then, write for this booklet, the Family Fallout Shelter. It will help you decide on the type of shelter you need in your home. For your free copy, contact your local Civil Defense office or write to Post Office Box, Home Shelter, Battle Creek, Michigan. This is Douglas Edwards saying goodbye for now and reminding you to be on hand when we again bring you great news events and personalities in Retrospect.
Retrospect, starring Douglas Edwards, was brought to you by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization in cooperation with your local Civil Defense office and your local station. Survival in the nuclear age is a personal responsibility, touching every American family. Make sure you take part. Learn the facts about civil defense preparedness. Start your home preparedness program today. The prepared family builds a prepared nation. Civil defense is an American tradition.
So that set is is awesome. That weird landscape with the it's very of that time. And here he's sitting there on that little nice office chair, which probably squeaked. I mean, come on, those chairs all squeak, so they must have been like constantly lubricating it when he was recording. Anyways, thanks for tuning in today, and thanks for the coffee. One way you can support AV Geeks is just hit the like button or the thumbs up button. Even though you've done it in the past, do it periodically to kind of keep our numbers up. What numbers? I don't know. How do we keep them up? I don't know. But it's what everybody else who does a video podcast says. So I'm just doing that. You can also share this with other people. We like doing it, and we like doing it for as many eyeballs as we could possibly squeeze into that little screen on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and other platforms. You can also support us by going to avgeeks.com, and we have DVDs for sale, and that's one way to say thank you and to support us, and also get copies of DVDs. But we'll be back again tomorrow. Hopefully I get better every day, where I'm not having my bronchitis flare up, sucking on a lot of cough drops, but we're getting by, we're surviving, and I'm happy to see you guys, and we will see you again soon. Everybody take care. Have a great rest of your day.